Recently, after rewatching Jaws and talking about the early works of Steven Spielberg, I was asked an interesting question. What happens to David Mann, played by Dennis Weaver, at the end of Duel? I had never really thought about it before. The 1971 TV movie, screenplay by Richard Matheson and adapted from his own short story, ends with Mann sitting on the edge of a cliff above the canyon where he vanquished his trucker foe, throwing stones at the wreckage as the sun sets. I had always assumed that he started walking along the nearby road, eventually reaching a busier highway and somehow getting to a rest area or roadside service station. It was suggested to me that he was in a very isolated place, far from safety, and that he might have perished from the harsh elements, or been bitten by a rattlesnake, or not encountered another car, or any number of things that made the ending seem more melancholy than triumphant. Was it enough of a victory to defeat his adversary? Can viewers be satisfied here without seeing him return to civilization? When I think about Duel now, I'm torn. What happens next? Does he live or die? That got me thinking about another film, Runaway Train, directed by Andrei Konchalovsky. Some interesting trivia about this film. It was based on an original screenplay by Akira Kurosawa, written in the 1960s, which was intended to be shot in the USA. Preparations were underway to begin production in October 1966, but those plans were abruptly cancelled, then rescheduled, then cancelled again. Some kind of problem with financial backers, I suppose. In April 1967, the project had been indefinitely postponed, and Kurosawa never went back to it. Jump to the 1980s, the Nippon Herald Company, which owned Kurosawa's script, asked Francis Ford Coppola to recommend a director, which led to Konchalovsky's involvement. Finances were secured, shooting began in 1985, and the film was released nationally in January 1986. The last bit of trivia, this film was the feature debut of Tommy Tiny Lister and Danny Trejo, who I'm sure you recognize. Anyway, why did this film come to mind? Well, Oscar Manny Mannheim, played by Jon Voight, is a bank robber incarcerated at a maximum security prison in Alaska. He has already tried escaping twice and has spent a long time in solitary confinement. He's also earned hero status among the other prisoners. Enlisting the aid of a young prisoner, Manny escapes again. The convicts make it to a switchyard and board a train consisting of only 4 engines. The engineer has a heart attack and dies. The brakes burn out, and the train takes off, accelerating out of control, hence the title Runaway Train. They also find a woman on board. Meanwhile, the prison warden has figured out where his escaped prisoners are and manages to get on board the train using a helicopter. The train is shunted onto a dead-end track to prevent any serious damage to destinations along its previous route. The train cannot slow down or stop. Everyone aboard is condemned to death. Manny chains up the warden in the lead engine, cuts the rest of the train loose so his fellow escapee and the woman can survive, and climbs on top of the lead engine. Riding the runaway train into the bleak, featureless void of a blizzard, Manny and the engine vanish from view. His ultimate fate is inevitable, yet still unknown as the film stops here. This is where the story ends. What happens next? We are not shown. And while we can imagine, probably accurately, there is still some ambiguity. Could he have somehow survived and found freedom? Or was the decision to go out on his own terms rather than stay alive in prison freedom enough? So I thought I would look briefly at a few more films with main characters whose ultimate fates are not overtly shown on screen, leaving some room for audience interpretation and personal head-canon to slip in and allow for differing viewpoints on how the films ended. I will be revealing the endings, so spoiler warning, but I will try to avoid giving away main details of the plot, so you can still get some enjoyment from viewing these films if you haven't seen them already. We left off surrounded by ice and snow, so let's stay there for a while. In 2011's The Grey, directed by Joe Carnahan, Liam Neeson plays a sharpshooter protecting staff at an Alaska oil refinery from wolf attacks. A plane crash results in the sharpshooter being stranded in the wilderness with a few other survivors. The elements and the wolves gradually reduced that number to 1, the sharpshooter. Now at the wolf's den, armed only with a knife and shards of glass bottles taped to his hands, he faces off against the alpha. Fade to black. A post-credit scene doesn't alleviate the ambiguity. We see the alpha's chest rise and fall with the sharpshooter's head resting on it. Did the man survive? Was this the wolf's last breath? Did both perish at the other's hands or fangs? Is it possible that our protagonist survived? It's still frozen, but we're at the South Pole now for John Carpenter's The Thing, released in 1982. Kurt Russell plays R.J. MacReady, and he faces off against a shape-shifting alien. This monster can become anyone if even a cell of it infects you. This is where the ending comes in. MacReady has seemingly finished off the main alien body, and apparently every member of his team has already been assimilated and destroyed. As the remains of the research base burn around him, MacReady prepares to freeze. Then, a missing team member, Childs, appears. Each man distrusts the other, but that feeling passes soon. MacReady shares a bottle of Scotch whiskey, and both exhausted men settle down for a cold death. But is Childs actually the alien in human form? Some viewers believe so. Others believe that it is MacReady who has been assimilated. Others yet believe both survivors to actually be the alien. Personally, I think both are human and they are doomed. Victorious, but doomed. John Carpenter isn't saying, so anyone's interpretation is as valid as anyone else's. Sticking with the horror genre, and also with alien life forms taking over the bodies and lives of human beings, but moving to the warmer climes of San Francisco, we now find ourselves looking at 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It was directed by Philip Kaufman. Aliens arrive on Earth and appear as seed pods with pink flowers. If you fall asleep, they copy your body and take over your life. You turn to dust and blow away. The replacement you carries on with your normal routines, albeit devoid of emotion. After slowly uncovering the invasion and realizing that humanity is on the brink of losing, a handful of people try to stay ahead of the changed and find safety. Donald Sutherland is one such man, but near the end of the film, he may have been caught. Veronica Cartwright plays one of the people from his group. She comes across him on the street and, believing him to still be human and pretending to be a pod person, approaches him and calls out to him. He points at her and emits the scream of a duplicate. As she screams, the film closes in on his face and freezes. Now, the optimist in me hopes she can escape. The optimist in me hopes that there are other people in areas that have not been invaded by the seed pods. Perhaps the remote north or south, where it is too cold for any vegetation. Could there be some type of resistance? Could this woman have managed to run away and escape? The ending seems bleak and clear, but what we don't see on screen might allow for more hopeful head-canon. What do you think? Sticking with horror, 2014's It Follows leaves things up in the air. Written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, this film features a supernatural entity that infects people in a way. If you have sex with someone infected, the entity will shift its attention to you, unless you have sex with someone, in which case it will shift to that person. What happens is that this entity follows you very slowly, just at a leisurely walking pace. It can look like anyone, alive or dead, and it wants to kill you. The only people who can see it are people who have been infected. It has a physical presence, but cannot be seen by the uninfected. Once it kills its target, it turns back to the previous target and follows them again. The film ends with two friends walking on the street. The girl was infected before. She passed it on to the boy. It is implied that he slept with a lady of the night, who might then pass it on to who knows how many people before the entity can find her. They are on the lookout for the entity, as there seems to be no way to kill it. What happens next? Lots of people online have come up with strategies to avoid death, to elude the entity, but what happens to these two people? Do they make it? Does it get them? As I said, it's up in the air. They are not safe yet, and may never be. Sticking with the supernatural for a bit, we have High Plains Drifter from 1973, directed by and starring Clint Eastwood. A mysterious unnamed man rides out of the desert, seeming to appear out of the heat waves on the horizon. He cleans up a town, shows the townsfolk their hypocrisy, and avenges a U.S. Marshal who was whipped to death. At film's end, he rides off again, passing a tombstone engraved with the Marshal's name. As he recedes into the distance, he seems to vanish back into the heat waves as if he were never there. Is he a ghost, the spirit of the Marshal? Is he a supernatural entity delivering vengeance? Some posit that he is the brother of the Marshal, come to exact revenge on his killers. Was he a real man, or something other? As an aside, the 1986 film The Wraith has some similar plot beats. It is not a great film by any means, but if you like High Plains Drifter, give The Wraith a look and tell me if you see the same similarities I do. While we're in the Western genre, let's look at the 1953 film Shane, directed by George Stevens. A gunfighter, trying to escape his past, rides into an isolated valley. He is hired as a farmhand by a local farmer, grows close to the man's son and a little too close to the man's wife, gets embroiled in the conflict between a cattle baron and the new settlers, and winds up in a showdown with the baron's hired gun. Shane wins in the end, but is wounded. Knowing he has no place in this peaceful valley and that he can't be a role model for the farmer's son, Shane rides off into the night. As the boy calls out for Shane to come back, we see him crest a hill and disappear off camera, slumping in his saddle. The question is this: does Shane die as he rides away? Is his wound so severe that it claims his life? The novel the film is based on is unclear about Shane's ultimate fate, but the filmmakers decided to have the actor slump in the saddle in such a way that it looks like he has met his end. Head-canon kicks in. Aside from the slump, there's no evidence for or against death. What do you think? No Country for Old Men is a 2007 neo-Western crime thriller directed by the Coen brothers. In it, we meet the terrifying hired killer Anton Chigurh, played by Javier Bardem. At the end of the film, he's in a car crash and suffers some injuries, including a severely broken arm. After paying a boy to give him a shirt to use as a sling, Chigurh limps away down the street. What happened to this monster after the events of the film? Was he ever apprehended by the police? Did he meet his end at the hands of a target, a rival, a vengeful loved one? The car accident must surely have drawn attention, resulting in someone calling emergency services. He's leaving a bloody trail as he limps down the street. Was Chigurh caught, or is he still out there? Last up is The Truman Show, directed by Peter Weir and starring Jim Carrey as the titular character. Unknowns to Truman, he has literally lived all of his life as the star of a television show about him. His whole existence has been fabricated for the entertainment of billions and the enrichment of advertisers. Slowly, over the course of the film, Truman comes to realize that his life is a lie. Overcoming his programmed fear of the sea, he sets out aboard a small sailboat and heads for the horizon, which is painted on the massive wall of an immense sound stage. He finds a staircase leading to an exit door. Climbing the stairs, Truman utters his famous catchphrase, "In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night," before bowing and leaving his false life behind him. And what happened next? How did Truman fare in the real world? What kind of trauma did he suffer as he transitioned from his externally manufactured reality to a world entirely of his choosing? The film ends with his escape, as it were. But what next? There you have it. 10 films with endings in which major characters are left hanging. In some cases, the ultimate fate can be surmised even without it being explicit, but even then, there is room for personal interpretation. What do you think? Are any of these obvious to you? Do you see the same ambiguity I do with any of them? How do you see some of these films ending? Do you think any deserve sequels, so whatever comes next can be explored? Or would that diminish the original? Is it better to never know definitively? Any and all comments are welcome. Also, if you liked this video and are interested in seeing more videos about entertainment topics of all kinds, please leave a like to let me know and consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.